We've talked about solving one-step equations. We've talked about solving two-step equations, some with parentheses, some with distributive properties, some with combining like terms, some with variables on both sides. So now let's move it up and let's talk about what happens when we have rational numbers in here. Okay, we're going to talk about fractions. We'll use some decimals too. I'll show you a couple different ways to go through this. All right, best way we'll do here is I'm just going to give you the same problem, and we're going to do it 3 different ways. Okay, so what I want you to do is, I'm going to do a check on Monday to see if you've watched this video. I want to see you write out the notes for each of these 3 problems. Okay, and you'll get some points for doing so. So make sure you write notes down. I just want you to have these examples with you. All right, so let's go ahead and start moving through this. First, this equation is just like any of the other equations. We follow the same steps that we normally would. Right here, we're starting with, we have x. We'd multiply by negative 5/8. Then we'd add 1/2. That's going to get me to 3/4. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to add negative 1/2 to both sides. Okay, so when I do this, I've got 3/4 minus 1/2. Okay, well, that doesn't work out so nicely. So what we need to do is we need to make our denominators the same. Okay, so we have 3/4 and 1/2. Well, you know, halves can be turned into fourths. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to convert this off to the side. So we'll do 3/4 here, and then we're going to do 1/2 becomes 2/4. Okay, and we'll make this a negative, and that's a positive. So when I combine these, I have positive 3 and negative 2. Well, positive 3 and negative 2 make 1/4. Okay, and then the positive 1/2 and negative 1/2, these cancel each other out for 0, and I'm left with negative 5/8 x is equal to 1/4. Well, this is where I'm going to use my multiplicative inverse. So I have negative 5/8 times x is equal to 1/4. So what am I going to do? I'm going to multiply both sides here by a negative 8/5. Multiply this one by negative 8/5. And then I'm going to go ahead and multiply out. Okay, so negative 8 times negative 5 is going to be 40. 5 times 8 is 40. Okay, those all cancel out. That's left with 1. Okay, so it's 40 divided by 40 is 1. On this side, we'll do 1 times negative 8, negative 8. 4 times 5 is 20. Okay, these can be simplified, and I can do x is equal to, divide both of them by 4, and I'm going to get negative 2/5. Okay? Hopefully that works for you. And let's go ahead and we can check our answer here. So, let's go ahead and we'll do negative 5/8, okay, times negative 2/5 plus 1/2, and see if that's equal to 3/4. Okay, well, this is going to be 10 over 40, which is equal to, plus 1/2 is equal to 3/4, which is equal to 1/4, plus, well, I'm going to change 1/2 to 2/4. And does that equal 3/4? Yes, it does. So I'm good. I got it right. Okay. Now another thing we could have done here is, at the beginning on this one, is we could have simplified ahead of time, right? So instead of doing 1 times 8, right, and then 4 times 5, and then dividing, what we could have done is we could have said 8 divided by 4. And what happens here is when you do that, this and this cancel out, and I'm left with negative 2. Okay, and this becomes 1. And so 1 times negative 2 is going to be negative 2. 1 times 5 is 5. Okay, it's just simplifying beforehand, right? You can multiply and then simplify, or simplify and then multiply. Either way, you end up with the same thing. Okay, so that's one method. That's your sort of most direct method, just doing the problem as the steps occur. This next problem, which I think a lot of you are going to like this one a lot, is what's called clearing the fractions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this. Okay, and essentially what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get rid of all of the denominators. So I'm going to look for the least common multiple of all of these. Okay, now what I like to do actually ahead of time is I like to change everything into the size piece that they're all going to become. Meaning, this is eighths, This is halves. Can I make halves into eighths? Yes, I can. This is fourths. Can I make fourths into eighths? Yes, I can. Whatever number you want to do here, you want to change them all into this. So I'm going to do this. So negative 5 eighths x plus 1/2 is now going to become 4 eighths is equal to 3/4 is going to become 6 eighths. Okay, now what I do here is I'm going to use the I'm going to multiply. I'm going to multiply both sides times 8. Okay, because that's what it's going to clear these fractions out. So I'm going to multiply this side by 8, and I'm going to multiply this side by 8. Okay, well then what I get is 8, right? 8 divided by 8 is 1, so I'm left with negative 5x, and 8 divided by 8 is 1, so plus 4 is equal to, and 8 cancels with this 8 with 6, okay? And that's the whole idea here. That's what you're trying to do. Then from here, I'm going to add negative 4, and I'm left with negative 5x is equal to 2. Divide by negative 5, divide by negative 5, and I get x is equal to, right? Now this negative is in the bottom. We typically don't like it in the denominator, so I'm just going to move it up to the top. It doesn't actually matter. 2 divided by negative 5. That's going to give you a negative result. So negative 2 divided by positive 5 is the same idea. Okay. Then you'll also notice same answer. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's try this one extra way. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Here we go. So let's try this one other way. Now what I'm going to do here is let's turn them all into decimals, okay? Now I'm not going to let you use a calculator, but I might put some decimal problems on there. I just want to show you get the same solution. I know that 5 eighths is equal to 0.625, okay? This is one that I have memorized. Maybe you have it memorized too. If not, eighths are good ones to memorize. You should definitely have halves, quarters, thirds, fifths, tenths, those different decimals you should have memorized. So for instance, I say, 3/4, you should know that's 0.75. Or if I say 3/5, you should know it's 0.6, 6 tenths. Okay, so then let's change this 1/2 is 0.5, and I just said 3/4 is 0.75. Okay, oops, I forgot my x. Now, the steps here, exactly the same as before, just what we were talking about, okay? I have 0.5, so I'm going to add negative 0.5, okay? And a negative 0.5 here. Also, notice I'm going to line these up, okay? Okay, I'm going to combine these. These cancel out, and I'm left with negative 0.625x is equal to, and then I have 0.25, okay? Now, one of the things I can do here is, and actually what I could have done to begin with, in fact, I'll show you here in a, we'll just do it right now. So I could have done this step up here also, and what I'm going to do here is it's what's known as clearing out decimals. Okay, so basically what you do is you look for the smallest place value here. So I have tenths, hundredths, thousandths, all right, and I have tenths, hundredths. So thousandths is my smallest one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides times 1,000. Okay, and this is what we know as clearing, okay, or clearing out the decimals. So what happens is this, right, becomes, I have 625 thousandths. So this becomes 625 times x, okay? Here I have 25. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this thousandths so that now I can say 250, right? Because I have 250 thousandths. So if I multiply by 1,000, I get 250. Okay. Well, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm not going to divide. Negative 625 divided by negative 625. And now you're looking at this maybe and you're saying, come on, this is ridiculous. Look how big these numbers are. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, 250, I can divide this by 25 and I can divide this by 25. Okay, this is going to cancel out, right? Negative, negative makes positive, so I get positive x. So let's see. That's 250. Well, that's going to become 10. Okay, because 25 times that. Now, how do I get to 625? Well, let's see. For every 100, there are 4 25s. Okay, right? If I count, if you could even just make a tally marks, right? So 1, 2, 25, 50, 75, 100. 25, 50, 75, 100. 25, 50, 75, 100. 25, 50, 75, 100. 25, 50, 75, 100. 25, 50, 75, 100. So this is 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 25. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 6 times 4, so 24, 25. Okay, 25 25s. Well, this can be simplified again, right? And I forgot my negative, so I'm going to put the negative in there. This can be divided by 5, right? So then I get negative 2, and 25 over 5 is 5. Okay? Now, if really I was doing this and you have decimals, I don't really want a decimal or a fraction as an answer. I want a decimal. So I'm going to put in that this is negative. And so let's do this. We'll take 5. Right, or 2 divided by 5. 5 doesn't go into 2. Okay, turn it into a decimal. 5 goes into 20 4 times, right? 20, no leftovers. So this is going to be negative 0.4, which maybe some of you have already known that 2/5 is 0.4. Now, we could have done that up here, right? 625 divided by 250, but hopefully what you're seeing here is that using fractions, in fact, is actually a little bit easier, especially with a decimal problem like this. Now, in all reality, once we got to this step here, okay, realistically, we would have used calculator. This one is a little bit more difficult than I was necessarily expect you to do in class by hand. However, I did want to show you the clearing decimals little trick there. So hopefully you have a good idea of how to do this. I'd like to, like I said, bring these notes to class, and I'll give you some credit for doing those. Okay? We will do some more practice in class on Monday. Have a nice weekend.